character, the importance of knowing your own tendencies, like how, basically how would one know more or less if one is more greedy or one is more hateful or one is more deluded, or how I know it's very broad.
Well, just by, you don't need to really know it in that way, but just need to know it. But that's greedy, that's why nature is like this. When you're confused or depressed, whatever, it's like this. Because then you find out your own character is still coming from the idea that you are a person who has a character. You understand what I mean?
Yes, like sort of as soon as you start thinking I am hateful, that means you have like a personality rather than...
You might just be aware of when the conditions for hatred arise, and this is what you're feeling. It's just you needn't claim it as a kind of personal defect. It's just this is the way it is, and then you're looking at it as an object in the mind rather than some subjective identity. That's what mindfulness really is. Just being when you feel angry, there's anger. Then the ignorant person always says, "Oh, I'm angry because so-and-so said this to me." Then it becomes more than what it is. It becomes complicated. If you just trust yourself to be just annoying, then you just learn from the way your vipaka karma operates. Then you're not claiming to be anything. You're not seeking an identity or defining yourself.
Would it be correct to sort of look in the past and ask yourself, well, what kind of things have happened to this person right here that may have led to this kind of reactions, or does it? Would that happen?
It's not necessary. I mean, we do tend to do that. You don't need to know. But I mean, we take an interest in ourselves. But for the path, kind of developing the path, it's just pure kind of understanding, knowing things. Not trying to analyze ourselves. Why do I have nice feeling, or why do I have frightened of lightning, or whatever? And I would make a case for it, something that happened. But even when you have all good, done a full analysis of why, of your personality, you're still stuck with it. Till you see it as an object rather than as the subject. Like analyzing yourself, it tends to put you in the subjective role of a personality. So tomorrow morning, if they said it would be warmer in Sydney than here.
It's going to warm up as well, but it will be, yes. Find the Thai accents enough. It's in the city, it's quite hot.
Ajahn, why is it from Sydney to Melbourne?
I don't know.
The cold thing is worse than ever.
Yeah, and when you're on a cold, the worst thing you can do is hold a big ceremony with hundreds of people. My mum phoned, sends her regards. She said you had a fantastic katina at Amravati, the katina.
Oh yeah.
She went to that. She said it was very, she used the word fantastic.
Where does she live? What part?
She lives in Olney, which is where, is it Tom Hancock used to live?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Just a few minutes walk from his house. So she did meet him before he died. Olney is about an hour's drive near Milton Keynes.
Yeah, I've been there. And was she a kind of Anglican or Methodist?
Anglican, when I was young, he took me to church every Sunday to see him eat. When I was a teenager, everybody in the family stopped going. That wasn't a big obstacle. She wasn't particularly happy with me being a monk, but over the years she's warmed to the idea and now seems to be benefiting quite a lot.
Yeah. Mothers tell them they want their sons to become monks. Yes.
Now my sister is getting interested. She's been offering homeopathic treatment to some of the Sangha. I don't know if you knew.
Oh.
At Amravati.
How many of these do you use?
2.
I just came across recently that the ticket seems to be the other way around. You see, it's Sydney, Melbourne, and then Melbourne, Sydney. And this also.
Your job. But she's booked you on the thing. Now it will.
From Sydney to Melbourne. We are in Melbourne. We will fly from Melbourne to Sydney. And now, here.
Time actually is telling me off.
You were, I remember when you first came to Chicha's house, and you could do it with that. I can remember that. Daniel.
1983. Ajahn Karuniko used to wear dungarees. He used to do all his work in the forest, wear his dungarees.
And you were, how old were you then?
20.
20,
I went to Nanach, that's where I didn't know Chithurst and Amaravati, well, Amaravati didn't exist then. I didn't know Chithurst existed.
At Malashah.
This is ginger from Sri Lanka.
The day you officially moved to Amaravati, I got a car to help. I had Chandapalo, Jnanaviro, and one other monk, and they're all very tall, and I was driving a Mini. And they weren't too happy. I think they were happy to get there, but they weren't happy about the size of the car. But only about 1 week after that, I moved to Thailand. I went to Thailand.
Was that before you did your retreat in Bangkok? So you did walking meditation in Bangkok?
Yeah, that's where I first encountered Buddhism in Thailand. What there was.
Was that after the time you took it?
No, I didn't know there was anything in England. I was pretty naive about Buddhism. I went to Thailand to keep right away. And it was there that they told me about Chitta.
We should make you talk out of compassion.
I cooked pizza for 34 people at Chitta's once. In that big oven.
Do you read this one?
Yes, it will. Should I? I know what you want.
Okay, do that.
I don't. Should I have answered the phone when somebody rings afterwards?
It's quite serious.
Oh, I could just hold it. Yeah, you could.
Pass it into the
Making the first cookie,
Coffee makers.
clearing and doing a few odd jobs. It took me over there. I went to Chithurst over about a year for a few times before
Were you at university?
I was finishing the last year.
No. I've just had it.
So what motivated you to become a monk? Young Englishman like you.
The meditation I used to do, attend a meditation group. The same was Venerable Punyo. We were at the same university at the same time. And they had a very large meditation group. Like sometimes you get 50 or 60 people every Thursday or something. And, it was run by the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order, but it's a very sort of open, simple system of meditation. Very accessible. And I just did that for a year.
Where?
At Bristol University.
Bristol.
It's always been a very Buddhist university. They teach
Yeah.
Buddhism, and they used to invite Christopher Titmuss regularly to teach. And he was the one that suggested to go to Thailand because he'd been a monk there. He just said, "Why not try that?"
seen a wombat yet? Wombat?
No.
To take you out tonight.
When I arrived back at Nenachak to become an Anakaraka, I think almost the first day, Ajahn Prasanna needed someone to go with him to hold money to hire a car, and he went to Barkawai, and Lumpur Lu was dying. Yeah, but the old monk who used to live there, I can't remember his name. It was the original, he was dying.
Oh yeah, yeah. What was his name?
I thought it was Ajahn Nu. But it's a long
He
time.
was very thin and
Very thin, sickly looking.
yeah.
And he's just lying on the floor in the sala with everybody around all the time. And he was just dying. And that was my first introduction to Thai monasticism, watching an old man die.
You're blessed. A blessing.
Devaduta.
Never knew that. Yeah, when we were going to, the Kunming Tomb, she gave a Bakuwai to Lumpur Sha with the suggestion that it be used for hot runs. And it was right on the river, and so that's where we were intending to go when we went to Mumbai instead. We were going to Bodhivana at the last moment with Ajahn Swain suggested Mumbai, and then Ajahn Chah said, yeah, to go there. So then later on, they developed all those resorts across
Karaoke bars.
We felt quite lucky.
Yeah.
Sumedho, what advice do you give me if in the near future I go to, if I get opportunity, that is, I don't know, feel intuitive maybe 10 years time or something, I might get an opportunity to go to Far Eastern Europe, that's where my family is from, and there's not much Buddhism there, but they have a lot of strong faith. And if I was to go as a monk there in that kind of situation where they don't really understand much about monks, what would you suggest, if you wanted to, let's say, try Tudong, try to explain to the people what you're about and try to introduce yourself in a very humble way? Do you think that would be a good thing to do, or is it a bit, I would say, a bit not appropriate for a monk?
What country?
It's former Yugoslavia. You know how former Yugoslavia had that big war and it was broken up in divisions?
Yeah.
I went there during the war because I was afraid my relatives would die, and that was in 1993.
But were they in Croatia? Or
Yes, Croatia. But I love the country. It's they have a lot of faith in the Pope.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of interest, you know. Again, there's a Serbian monk at Haarlem, and then Slovenian, and Hungarian, and
They're all up at home, aren't they? Eastern Europeans.
we have Hungarian.
Hungarian.
Football.
Is it something you feel like it was your calling to go to England? Like it seemed like the way your life came out was like almost your destiny. Like people put chart and suddenly an invitation to England, suddenly the offer of the monastery, just all spontaneously happened. Is it
Looking back, it seems inevitable that I never ever thought of living in England. You know, I never. I thought in my mind, really, but it seemed a natural thing to do. I mean, I never felt that, you know, I never felt like I had to go back to the United States. But there's a lot of interest in Croatia, because it's so Catholic. I don't know, but the like in Slovenia, there's quite, in Ljubljana, there's quite a lot of interest. Monks go there every year to teach.
Oh, really?
And in Serbia, Belgrade, and Novi Sad.
Okay.
And Czech Republic, a lot, and Hungary, Slovakia. No, I mean, people always come back praising, you know, they really like those.
Did you go there yourself?
I've never been there.
Oh, okay.
I was supposed to, there was a Serbian man that used to come, Amravati, and he had a Buddhist group in Novi Sad, and he invited me to give a retreat there, 10-day retreat. And before I went, the war broke out.
Oh, was this back in the 90s?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And then it was no longer possible. And I think Ajahn goes to Serbia. I mean, he's gone twice now, 2 years.
Where did Bodhivana go? Latvia, was it?
Latvia. I've been to Russia.
Sister Titamani goes to the Ukraine, isn't it?
What?
She goes to the Ukraine, Titamani?
She goes to Russia. She's the one that arranges it in Russia, and then she's not Ukrainian, but I guess there's a lot of interest there. There's everywhere. Getting people from like Romania, Bulgaria, all those places. Not a lot, but I mean, those are countries you don't expect anyone to know anything about Buddhism.
The Kuba Ajahn, when I was in Thailand, said some interesting things about Russia. Some of them sent their, you know, and they sense that Russia in remote areas, they're not Buddhist, but sort of form of asceticism. of a different sex, and they're quite advanced.
Yeah, we have
Practitioners of some sort.
Buryatia. You know Buryatia?
I've been to Russia, but not everywhere.
That's Buddhist Republic in Lake Baikal.
Oh.
I've been there.
Oh. What was that like, Ajahn? Are they very different towards the
They're like Tibetan type. They follow Dalai Lama. Kalupas. And they have a big monastery outside of Ulan-Ude, which is the capital of the Buryatia, and it called the Ivoljinsky monastery.
Which one, sir?
Ivoljinsky.
Ivoljinsky. That's funny. Ivoljinsky.
What's it mean in Russian?
Well, evil is like English.
Oh, is it the same meaning?
No, it just sounds funny.
I-V-O-L.
Which way?
I-V-O-L.
Evil.
Evol.
Evoljinsky.
Evol.
Oh, it must be the name of some sort.
Sounds like a name.
Yeah.
And it's like Tibetan, like Mongolian, because they're on the Mongolian border. You know, so they're Buryatis are from the same ethnic background in Mongolia.
When you did go to England, did Lumpur Cha give you any sort of last words, or not necessarily last words, but advice for going and starting off there?
He made me promise not to go back to Thailand for 5 years.
Did you keep it?
Well, I felt like going back in the first year, actually, but because of the promise. But then he had his illness before.
It's just a few years after you went.
Yeah.
But he did send a letter, didn't he, with some advice? I remember Ajahn.
Yeah, it's a kind of koan. That if you can't go forward, you can't go backwards, you can't go sideways, up or down, what do you do? Something like that.
Ajahn, when you learned the Patimokkha, what method did work for you? Was it just constant repetition, or studying the Pali, learning great verses or really, really long, how was your process in these activities? Quite interested.
Well, I found out that I have very good memory, retentive memory, so I didn't realize that until I became a monk. I had to memorize all these charts. So I was in this monastery where they had really long vindabhat. Took hours to go, in Tamsang Pat. You know Ban Kamakong? It was the furthest village. And I go there during a pansa. I just take several of the bits of the Patimokkha and memorize them all as I was walking through this village. At the end of the pansa, I had memorized the whole thing and chanted it.
Wasn't it 2 hours there and 2 hours back?
Yeah.
Is that the one at the back of Wapapong, the really long one? Oh no, this is sorry, this is
Also, I found it easier to memorize while walking. Somehow, trying to sit in my kuti and memorize it, I just get bored and restless. But in the walking, and then I somehow your body's moving, and then you're memorizing these holy words. Remember the 10th Nistikya Bhajitya, that's a real difficult.
Is that the Chakadachung?
When I first heard the Patimokkha, I was amazed because we were never encouraged to memorize things and spool them. So, in fact, they discouraged it, like it was dangerous or whatever. So, I thought, amazed with me when this monk chanted these 227 rules in Pali, but I thought, I'll never be able to do that. And then, because, in Ubon at the time there were no English chanting books, and I had to learn the morning, evening pujas, chants, and so I had to transliterate from what I heard people saying. So I actually learned the Thai pronunciation, the way that Isan monks pronounce Pali. But I remember, the first, the Mina Punya chant, I thought, I'll memorize that, but I'll probably, take the whole panza, and then I memorized it in a day, and it surprised me. I just didn't realize. So that's how I started memorizing everything. I memorized sonnets from Shakespeare and poetry, and I'd keep you going all evening.
How many suttas did you try to memorize? Did you have a core, like a part that you could say is like your own CV, like we went to Dhammacakka, Anakala, 5, 7? Did you learn these?
Yeah, we learned
Memorize them?
Anatalakkhana
Okay.
and Fire Sermon.
5, 7.
Cái đó tiền.
So you memorized. Wow. That's my dream, but slow one. Slowly getting
Did you tell him the way you learn Patimokkha? Oh, he's already told.
shame.
Good.
Just do it, look. 2 days.
So tomorrow it will be in Sydney, and Nina will provide us with a meal, I assume.
Yeah, right.
And
Once you've got a ticket.
well, we don't have a ticket yet. That could be a problem. But she's pretty determined person. I hear.
She'll hire a plane if she has to.
Yeah, she'll book it.
Lumpur, can we give you a massage for a massage tonight?
What do you mean by we?
The Sangha.
All of you?
Usually, Ajahn, we all sit in the room and chit-chat. It's like a tradition.
Like being trampled by elephants.
Do you do that in your monastery, everybody? Do you have like an occasion where the monks get together and they massage?
No. They do that in Thailand. Yes.
As long as it's not too late, as long as it's travelling too much.
Car, Ajahn.
Ajahn Panisaro is a very good masseur. And then there's a Thai, professional Thai man in London that gives me a massage every week. He's as a donna, I think, generosity. Maldi, his name's D. Maldi.
Good.
Good doctor. And in Ajahn Museum, and they bought this kind of wooden tub, bathtub from Japan, and they made him they make hot water from charcoal burner and give him a bath every night all at once for some of them. In England, we'd never submit to that.
When he was here, one of his trips, we took him to the Blue Mountains near Sydney. Beautiful area, and the accommodation was quite good. He had a spa bath in his suite. And when it was bath time, he put on his bathing cloth and he just got in and stood in it. And we all sort of, what do we do now? So we turned the spa on and he sat there and we bathed him in that. Sheets of water and things.
Yeah, we always debate a little bit wrong. But I never liked much to do that with me.
I remember when you used to come to Wat Nana Chat, we used to do it.
Yeah.
You used to complain that we treat you like a baby.
It's like in Thailand, everything's kind of out in the open, and people, live very much with other people. And in England, privacy is the word. Everything is about privacy.
A man's home is his castle.
So for Thai people, I must think, it looks almost like, everybody's kind of behind their doors, and everybody has their own room.
We used to bathe at Vipassana. Ajahn Jayaswara was once a week. Vipassana every day. His Vipassana.
Sao? Xem không phải về cái gì đó.
Should we start to give you a bath once a week? I think I am.
Outdoors.
In the summertime.
And when not can do this to practice this for Ajahn.
Only when he's on tutor. We go to the main, but normally. Now I think most monasteries you have individual bathrooms, go in, shut the door, that's it.
To answer.
Hello, Bodhivana Monastery. Maybe you can speak with Ajahn Panisawa. It's Tanya, she wants to know what to say.
Tanya.
Oh, really?
What's to speak to Krishna Sumedho?
No, she wants to visit, she wants to know what.
No, which day is it?
I'm doing well, right? You think I'm good, how do you do?
She signed a petition, you know.
I know. She came here with Sister Chandra. I didn't mention anything about Bhikkhuni.
Oh.
Just talked about Australia and more kind of general things.
Yeah, she's not a very aggressive person. I went to this years ago. It was they had a Buddhist Christian conference in Berkeley, California, and I was invited as a keynote speaker. So, and, you know, I was a student at the University of California in Berkeley years ago, and so I was quite interested in this conference. So I went, and the first day, and you know, as I arrived, was at the theological seminary right next to the University of California, and Ayakema is there, and she and I were always quite good friends because I knew her at Wat Buddha Dhamma and places like that. But she's obviously had something. That she was really angry with me. I don't know why. She came up to me in front of a large group of people, started saying, "Why didn't you?" yelling at me in public, and it was because I guess it was because they had some kind of Buddhist nuns conference in India, and none of our nuns went to it. And she assumed that I'd probably forbidden them to attend, but I don't even remember that they even asked to do it. But anyway, that was the beginning of this Christian Buddhist conference. And I came with, you know, she's right in your face, you know, really impressive. So she just, I tried to stay away from her. And then, as the time went by, I got these angry glares from women at the conference. And then, I was beginning to feel more and more uncomfortable. And then, you know, I was a keynote speaker for a night in which I gave a talk at a plenary meeting, you know, for everybody. And so did that, and then it was her turn to do this. And that night, it just happened that one of the Vipassana teachers I know very well in Berkeley wanted me to go and visit his Vipassana group, which I did. So I wasn't there, I came as taught. And so the next morning I go to the meeting, and Master Hua, the Chinese master, he tells me that I came up, was really angry with me for not attending and made an announcement at a plenary session that the one monk that should be here supporting me is not here. And that could only be me, since I was the only Theravada monk there. So, anyway, after that, I really got these angry looks at these feminist women, and I remember several of them cornering me in a corridor. And it was very distressing, the spirit. And so, after that, I just, dreaded being having these women attacking me over something. I didn't even know really what I'd done, except I came up was giving this message. And I'd always gotten on with her quite well, because I never. But after that, I didn't, I avoided her, because she set up a place in Germany. So it was kind of memories like that do create this sense of be careful. In England, they're not very aggressive, so that people don't really, I've never had any great problem in England. And when I go to give retreats in Spirit Rock, they're pretty, they never bring these issues up. But these are very strong. Right now, at this time, it seems to be a very strong issue about bhikkhuni ordination, ever since the Hamburg conference, which was several years ago. And I think they see it as like bhikkhuni making women equal to bhikkhus. They see a bhikkhuni as a kind of step upward for women to be equal to bhikkhus. But it's not really, is it? It's even more. I mean, they have more rules than we have, and they have they have all kinds of Sanghanisesa rules and more Parachic rules. And they're not supposed to travel alone, and all kinds of things. So, so a lot of what I think the image is that it's a equal status, because a lot of the women that are campaigning for bhikkhuni ordination don't want to be bhikkhunis.
The ones who want to ordain, do they want to take on board what the format of the bhikkhuni Theravada?
Well, this is one of the problems, is that the ones that I know that have taken bhikkhuni ordination usually, they don't live, there's no kind of bhikkhuni monastery for them, and they don't stay in Taiwan or Korea and train. separately, usually in flats or apartments or whatever.
So they see themselves like a bhikkhu in a way, but in a female form.
I don't know. I've never really talked to them, got to know any of them that well. I became bhikkhuni, and she had charisma, so she attracted people. And I think she was even, she was supposed to be a good teacher. So when she died, her chief disciple is a bhikkhu, who I met a couple of months ago when I was in Switzerland. He came to see me. Very nice monk. And then the chief female, bhikkhuni, she couldn't get on with the monk, so they split. And so this is, it's how Buddhism develops in Europe is something else, what really happens in the future. Because there's no social pressure, like here in Thailand, you've got a lot of social pressure and tradition and history, and in Europe it's each one for themselves. There's no reason why you just couldn't start your own, ordain yourself. I think some do. For me, like that, it's about liberation. So, this is it's an expedient means for liberation, being a bhikkhu, rather than a position that I cling to. So I'm just trying to make that more like the common goal of the nuns and monks in Amaravati, a common goal of liberation. To point to what is what's really worthwhile, or what is just worldly dhammas, and that we have to keep in mind. Like when I went to live in England, for example, I didn't have a clear direction. I was confident in my practice, and my goal was liberation. I was never, I wouldn't have gone there if they wanted me to be a Buddhist missionary or be even a teacher, or that wasn't part of their invitation. It was to live as a Buddhist monk in the UK, and I've always kept this liberation as my focus, because it's easy. You're in a position where people project on you all kinds of things, so they want you to become a teacher, become spread Dhamma throughout, convert the Europeans to Buddhism, and there's also to spread the pure Theravada teaching, because there's a lot of Mahayana. It gets into all this ridiculous opinions and views. Just like any, on the worldly level, that's all there is opinions and views. So, through my 33 years in England, this has always been my reference point. So it saves me from, because on a personal level I can be quite intimidating. My personality is one that wants to please people, has a hard time, when they invite me places to say no, wanting to give people opportunities for ordination, to hear the Dhamma. I'm, full of kind of magnanimous ideals, and so, I'm kind of, not that I'm lacking in kind of magnanimity, but I have to be careful, because this is where people burn out. They get involved, like the monk that founded the English Sangha Trust in 1956, the English monk, Bodhivana, and he was, I think, one of Bodhivana's teachers in the beginning, and he was very intelligent, gifted man, a journalist in London, and became a bhikkhu and set up the English Sangha Trust, and then, but then he was kind of like a one-man show. He was doing everything, printing newsletters, writing books, teaching, and then he even started sending men off to Wat Phak Nam. That's where Bodhivana first ordained. He'd bring them back to London. They just go get a kind of ordination in Thailand and come back, and then they'd have to become teachers right away. Weren't even trained or given time to develop. So this was all good intentions, and it was an initial kind of it was the beginning of it all. But the chairman of the trust, George Sharp, who's the one I met, had seen all the mistakes they'd made in the previous 20 years. And also, several years before I went to England, Ajahn Mahabua and Ajahn Panyawada went there. And George was, he asked Ajahn Mahabua what to do with the Hampstead Vihara, because there had been a kind of movement by some of the lay people to make it a lay center. And George was very much keen on, like Kapilavadu's initial intention for Buddhist monks. So he kicked these people out of the Hampstead Vihara, much to their distress, and then under Ajahn Mahabua's advice, he closed down the Vihara for several years, and so nobody was living in it when I arrived in '76, and Ajahn Panyawada had given me the address, the telephone number of George Shaw if I went to London. So I phoned him, and they put me up in the Hampstead Vihara for 3 or 4 nights. June of '76, it was the hot summer, beautiful weather. London looked so glamorous in the sunshine.
It fooled you before. We thought it would be like that all the time.
Well, I mean, England's reputation is always rain, and the English are the worst ones. They complain about the weather more than anyone else. I actually like the weather. It's fairly, for me, it's a very pleasant climate, but and it's not as bad as the English say it is, at all. But anyway, George Sharp was very keen on not, that's why I took up the invitation when I went there, because I felt, like what I'd seen in the States where I'd been before, it was more or less, they're interested in teachers and meditation teachers, things like that, so it seemed like a really good setup. And then Ajahn Mahabua advised George there'd be somebody in the future coming along. So he closed down the Vihara, and then I came, I think, several years later, and I guess he thought I might be that's somebody. And at the time, in 1976 and 75, the Americans fled Vietnam. So the helicopter landing on the American embassy in Saigon, and so suddenly, the Vietnam War was over, and then the communists just invaded Laos and Cambodia and South Vietnam, and we were, of course, right on the borders of those countries. So, and in Ubon is where Laos and Cambodia and Thailand all meet. So there was a big panic in Thailand at the time. It was the domino theory. There's this theory that once these countries went communist, then Thailand would be next, and then Malaysia, and Philippines, and Indonesia. They would just all fall like dominoes falling in a row. And so in Thailand, I remember there was a huge kind of panic, and there were meetings everywhere. And of course, you're right on the borders of Laos and Cambodia and the Khmer Rouge. We weren't far from the Cambodian border, so it was. You could even hear the guns from Wat Nanachat, and then the terrible rumors about what was happening, in Cambodia, and. So then I happened to, so I had this feeling that maybe I should, if the chances occurred, I should maybe think about establishing a monastery outside of Thailand, and I expected it to be the United States. And so then, I never wanted to leave Thailand, actually. I really liked living there, but then this kind of panic, it was affected me. And we had about 22 bhikkhus at Nanachat at the time. I remember sitting, in the asana song in that sala, looking down the rows at all these Western men ordained, and what's going to happen to all these people if it goes communist? So then this kind of thought maybe I should think about going back. And I thought I'm not going to seek anything. If something happens, maybe, and it seems all right, then I'll do it. And then so this is how fate works. That was in 75, and then 76. My mother had this swine flu epidemic, and she became very ill. And I hadn't been home to see my parents since 1963. So my father said, "You must come and visit your mother before she dies." So I flew on the Siam airline. They started a new airline at the time called Siam Airline. They gave me a free ticket and it flew from Bangkok to LA. And my family lived in San Diego. So, and then Maura Panyo came with me, Paul Breiter, and Pansak as the Upatak, Thai Upatak. And so we flew to Los Angeles, San Diego, and by the time I arrived, my mother was recovering, and so we stayed there for several weeks. And then Marapanya was from New York City, so we went to New York City, went with him, and went to see Jack Cornfield and Joseph. They were setting up the IMS, Mary, and they made it very clear it was not for monks. It was all right, but there's certainly no pressure on me. And I went to like to Boston and various other places, but nobody seemed terribly interested at all. So then I flew, then the Thai International Air, because the Siam Air gave me a free ticket from Bangkok to LA, Thai International gave me a free ticket from London to Bangkok. They didn't go to the States then. So I had to get to London, and that's why I met George, and then the invitation was made. And so then but I couldn't say, I didn't really know whether I would stay there or not, but I said, you have to, I wanted him to see what monastery is like, to meet Ajahn Chah, so I invited him to Wat Pah Po, and he came, I think in December of '76, and met Ajahn Chah, and they talked it over, and then they invited Ajahn Chah and myself to go in May 1977.
Was that his first visit to Thailand, seeing his met?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We went to see Ajahn Mahbua and Ajahn Panyawado, and Ajahn Chah, the way, was pretty cool and indifferent to George. George is kind of a bit of a kind of pompous tendency, and a kind of arrogant manner. But he, so I didn't know how he would get along, in Isan, and then, first time in Thailand, and he had to sit at the end of the line after the Nagarikas, that long dining hall, and on the floor with one of these enamel basins, Dalaman with chips in it, it's really revolting. And then he gets the end of, after all the food's been passed out, George would get what's left. And so I thought, this is really going to put him off. But it inspired him. He was so impressed with Luang Por Chah. And
Is that the man that Luang Por Chu gave the bad cootie to again?
no, that was another one. So who knows how all of you will end up? Where?
You think the world will end in 2012 again?
Sometimes I wish it would. Yeah, I think there's a movie out called 2012, because they're talking about it in India. Everybody, in India, it's a big hit. The end of the world.
Luang Por, why did you think Luang Por Chah said to you not to come back for 5 years? Why do you think that was, the meaning behind that?
I just assumed he kind of knew it would be difficult, and I think it just was, trying to help me, actually.
How long was it before Chitas was offered?
Yeah, I lived in London for 2 years. And then the trust, English language trust at the time was, they had terrible conflicts within it. So, there were factions and they were fighting and using each other with horrible words. And so I'd have to go to these meetings, and I didn't know the background of all this. George had tried to explain it to me, but I didn't really sink in until I was in the middle of it. And then when the people are just having a go at each other, blaming each other, you don't really understand what the problem is. But there was a faction that didn't want to leave London. And Hampstead is a kind of posh part of London. It's very prestigious, in northwest London. So and they liked living. They wanted the Vihara to stay there in Hampstead, and then like George and the others wanted to sell off the Hampstead Vihara and to buy a forest property in the countryside. Well, that was the initial interest, when this was what George offered Ajahn was to sell the property in London and find a forest and establish a forest monastery like this. And so, but there were this faction in the trust that fought tooth and nail against it.
Is Amarvati built on Hampstead property?
No, it's a different Hampstead. Hemel Hampstead.
So what happened to the property in the end? Or it just still existed?
Well, we sold it, and then I was forced into a position where I had to tell these ones that didn't agree to go. So I told them they had to leave, get out of the trust. Became very kind of tyrannical. But at least when I did that, and they did, and then everything worked out. After that, because the remaining ones were quite well behind it. So they were the ones that were very had the vision anyway. Like there was Morris Walsh, who was a famous scholar, and Geoffrey Beardsley was a solicitor. They're all kind of, they're quite elderly people. And Frida Wint, she's still alive, she's in her 90s in Oxford. And George, and these were very, the others were younger and more like wanting the convenience of a city Buddhist center. And then it was in a nice area of London. So it was understandable, the conflict, but George was determined to, because they had so many unpleasant experiences at the Hampstead Vihara with fights and quarrels all through its history. George said it's fraught with ghosts. And strange things did happen there. and then it was difficult to find property. But at that time, property in England was not outrageous; it was reasonable. And then, so we spent those 2 years looking in various places, and then finally we met this in 78, and there's this beautiful heathland in London called Hampstead Heath, huge, kind of, a lot of it's kind of gardens, but also it's just wild heathland. Quite a beautiful, huge parkland, and we'd go up there every day on Bodhivana, and we'd take our alms bowls, and then we'd walk around Hampstead Heath, and we met this man who was jogging, and he stopped us and asked what we were about, and we told him, and then he ended up offering us hammer wood in Chithurst, 108 acres of woodland in West Sussex, which was an area we never thought of looking, because it was very expensive. It's out, it's very, like they call the stockbroker's belt, and usually retired military officers and upper class Brits live around there. And we never thought of living in Sussex, but that brought us into West Sussex, and then and it developed, and so we acquired this forest, and but you can't build anything in the forest. It just was a forest, that's it. And so then George looked for a house, and this Chithurst house was then, well, it was a derelict house, Victorian, big 22-room house, and in dreadful condition, but was in a very beautiful setting. So the owner wanted to sell it. We got that, and then we acquired where the nuns' cottage is in it's the kind of heartland of the hammer wood that Paul James gave us. So we got the woodland around this lake and stream and waterfall, but the rest, there was a cottage and it was hammer pot. Before the Industrial Revolution, they used to make like hammer ponds were making steel, iron, and whatnot. So this big artificial lake and beautiful place, and then we finally acquired that. So we ended up with this very beautiful property that where before all our efforts at seeking suitable places were always frustrated. You just didn't seem to be getting anywhere for 2 years, and then we got probably one of the best in Europe as far as yeah.
Did he like
In
it?
'79, just as we were moving there.
Did he like the park?
Yeah, he slept several nights in the derelict house. I think he thought, Ajahn Sumedho's really in for a lot of work. The 5 years that I lived there, we just had to rebuild this mansion. And then the community kept growing, and we had to expand it. And that's why Amaravati, in 1984, we acquired Amaravati.
You didn't see the inside of Chithurst house then before you...
I did, yeah. It was like out of Charles Dickens, Great Expectations, you kind of, the owner, Mr. Hadley, wouldn't let George inside the house when they agreed to buy it. And because he said it's just derelict. And he and his wife and his son and daughter, who were grown up, lived in this wreck of our house. And so, but anyway, George saw, he had this kind of vision. This is an ideal setup. So he didn't really care what it was like inside. And before we moved there, they let us in, and we go in this dark entrance. And there was a statue of the Virgin Mary with a red votive candle lit in front of. They were Catholics, and then they had this room, like a reception room, and the whole place was like they were people that hoarded everything. Anything that went into their house never went out of it. And they had stacks of newspapers in the entrance hall, stacks of newspapers dating way back, and all the rooms were filled with junk and like plastic bottles and everything, you know. They collected everything, and then around the house they had this coach house, which was derelict, and there were all kinds of there were about 40 broken down Morris Minor cars in various states of decay, and old refrigerators rusting, and old typewriters. It looked like a gypsy park, you know. Everything was falling down. And yet it was you could see it was quite a beautiful looking house, and then with this fantastic view, looking out across what they call the South Down. So I wasn't put off by it when I went inside, but they were very strange family. But they also, Mr. Hadley seemed to be glad that it was going to become a monastery. So, I mean, he knew we were Buddhists, but somehow that didn't really seem to, the fact that we were going to make it into a monastery enthused him. He was quite happy about that. So we acquired that house, and the floor, you know, where the shrine room is now in the house, that floor had all sunken down, had fallen down into the cellar below. The place was unsafe to live in. You know, rotting from inside, there's a dry rot through all the wooden structure, the stone house. So the first 5 years we had to strip the inside.
That's why you were living in it.
Yes.
But these days you wouldn't even be able to move in, would you?
They could have kicked us out because it was, you know, it wasn't suitable for this. You know, modern standards didn't let you live in it. And then, so we lived in a work site for 5 years, and just as it was beginning to be livable, I had to move up Dhammavatthi and start over there. And I was very attached to Chitta, so I didn't want to leave, but, you know, I was the only one. I was the leader of the group, so off I went. And there it was it was a school like wooden buildings built by the Canadians in '39. And it was still occupied when we first moved in. It was owned by Bedford County, the adjacent county, and they put children with learning difficulties. So they had it was a boarding school for boys and girls with learning difficulties that couldn't learn in the ordinary schools in Bedford. So it was one of the first schools dealing with dyslexia and learning difficulties, and, you know, recognized in Britain. But it was because of the nature of the buildings, they hadn't really done much to repair them, and so we had, and they were just wooden huts really. So we had to insulate them and spent several years making them livable. So, you know, most of my monastic life has been building and repairing.
It looks very nice now.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I, like Chithurst, is like a forest. Its beauty is in the forest, and beautiful trees and landscapes, vistas, very green. And then, but in England, for some reason or other, why, like you go through various stages in meditation, and like I remember in Wat Papon and Ajahn, just, you're so, you're learning how to live within the structure of Vinaya, and then there's so many, and Thailand is such an incubator for every living creature, that you always have to look at the ground, not to step on anything. Then they have these terrible ants that are, when if you step on them, then they bite with painful bites. And so in living in Thailand, you're always looking at the ground just to avoid stepping on anything. And then when I went to England, I hadn't done a lot of meditation on space and emptiness, and so, and England's more quiet than Thailand. It's the northern, it's quite far north, so you felt this incredible silence and stillness, even in London. And then, but Chithurst also had this kind of forest. It didn't have all these annoying things in it, but it was also, you felt you were in surrounded by trees and protected in a forest. And then the thing that attracted me to Amaravati was it's on top of a hill, and it's like a dome, sky, space and sky, and that was the sign, my nimitta, when I saw Amaravati the first time, was that it seemed like endless space. So, and it was, Chithurst had quite a big property, and Amaravati's 31 acres. It had a small 12-acre forest attached to it. And then the about 20 or so of these wooden huts. And the good thing about it was that it had because these huts, we could use them all as living space. In England, there's a lot of rules about building, and especially in areas like that, where kind of beautiful parts of England. But because it had all these kind of hut buildings, gave it tremendous floor space that we could use. And they weren't buildings that you had to keep. It's like you can do anything you want. You've got the actual agreed space to use. So when we built the temple, we took down 2 of the buildings to build the temple there. And then we were becoming more, like we agreed with the council in Sussex that we wouldn't, it had this very narrow road going up to Chithurst. And so we made agreements we wouldn't, you could only have so many people resident there. And we were allowed 5 holidays a year for big kind of public functions. But Chithurst didn't have the facilities for large groups of people. And so I decided that because we were growing as a community, we were already over our promised allotted amount of people, and a growing community of nuns, that I'd have to find something else. And this was in '84, Mrs. Thatcher was Prime Minister, and she was selling off, they're selling off schools and Borstal prisons, and they were selling, so they were closing down a lot of institutional buildings. And so I asked some friends, I thought north of London, because Chithurst is about 50 miles south of London. People complain about difficult to get to, so we found this Amaravati in Hertfordshire, which is, right in the home county, what they call the home counties of England. So it's much easier for people to come to from London or from Birmingham or Luton, all those places. So it was the ideal spot. And I thought I'd use it. At first I called it the Buddhist Center, and to attract the crowds there, to kind of preserve Chitter's ambience. And so, and there we had institutional buildings, we had big kitchens and bathroom facilities, things like that, toilets, big halls. And so it was usable right from the beginning, but also it was in bad state of repair, and they had this huge central heating system that was so expensive, because oil was very expensive then, oil heating, and it was behind the sala, they had all this machinery, this huge boiler, and these pipes underground going to all these buildings to heat them in the winter time. And none of the buildings were insulated, they're just wooden cladding with kind of wallboards nailed onto it. And so, we couldn't afford to run the central heating system. We didn't have that much, and we didn't have very much money, so we never used it, and we had to. We started insulating, and for the first winter there, ask Ajahn Paul about the first winter. We had a really cold winter back here, and it was a Siberian freeze, like all over Europe, even as far as Rome, were frozen. And of course we were on top of a hill, so in England, so the place just froze up for about 2 weeks, and all the plumbing froze. Everything was ice and snow, and I used to walk Jungro, and they had these lamps, electric lamps outside that gave you kind of a sickly light, on snow in an English winter. And it's so grim and depressing. And I was one winter's retreat, and I was walking Jungrom in the snow, on the ice, by one of these sickly lanterns, and I saw everything. I was so depressing, it was so cold, and we huddled together in the sala around. We had a fireplace, and then we had like electric fires scattered here and there. We were all cold all the time and huddled in blankets, and couldn't get much worse than this. And somehow I felt this great surge of joy, in this. I felt this surge of joy arise in me. I didn't really care. It was all right. I wasn't depressed mentally. It was just uncomfortable physically, and that was quite a. It surprised me because, it was pretty bleak and unpleasant, but I suddenly realized I didn't mind. It was all right. And so then when it started thawing, then all this frozen plumbing, and all these toilets in these buildings, and the pipes started exploding. And it got dangerous because they were like exploding out, and if anyone was in the building, they could have been killed. So Ajahn Paul then was newly ordained, and that winter he spent lying underneath these buildings trying to repair the pipes. I mean, I've had this vision of his legs sticking out from underneath. And so it it was very grim the first several years. And now it's all very comfortable. Definitely middle class England.
Rose bushes and daisies and
You came at that time, didn't you?
87.
One part is a serious possibility of getting the surrounding land now, isn't there? And planting more forests.
Yeah, there's a beautiful farmland around Amravati. We're trying to buy it and reforest it.
Did you approach farmland?
Not yet. I think when I go back. Tanya, what's she?
Oh, she's free on Tuesday, but on Thursday we're going to Ajahn.
And from her house, that's not.
And what time will probably be back?
On Wednesday, we go down from here Wednesday afternoon.
Wednesday afternoon,
Tuesday night, we come back here.
Tuesday night.
Wednesday down in here. Wednesday evening, going to the city to give talk at the Buddhist restaurant.
Sorry?
Stay at the Buddhist And Thursday morning, go from the Buddhist Society to Ajahn to the Bodhivana.
Okay.
And stay one night, Thursday night. And Friday morning, you go to the airport quite early.
Okay. It means that we leave here on Wednesday afternoon.
So they could come here Wednesday, or they could go to Ajahn and go Thursday. From the house to Ajahn and close maybe 20 minutes.
And she said that Ajahn will not allow visiting in the afternoon.
Yeah, he's pretty strict, but you have to negotiate something.
So what you told at what where on Wednesday night?
We're at Monash University,
Monash University.
but the talk is organised by the Buddhist Society of Victoria.
And what time is the talk?
The talk starts at 7:30. So at the moment we're thinking to take one floor down at 5:30. Which you get there before, so 5:30. So that we can have an afternoon.
And we spend the night at the Buddhist Society
After the talk, they'll take you to the Buddhist Society, which is not far.
in London.
They have rooms. Did you ever see the Jewish synagogue before?
Yeah, because I came when Ajahn was going to disrobe on Sattva.
That's
All the way from England.
the invoice in there.
7 miles.
Three bedrooms. And then Sunday, after breakfast, they take you up to Paris, that's what's the main thing. Stay there one night.
On Thursday.
So that's for lunch or lunch.
It means that she can come to see the Lord on Thursday morning.
Buddhist Society cook, she goes early. Breakfast time, people come and bring you breakfast.
Now she's working for every morning.
Training.
Did you want to shower before a massage? Did you want to bathe before having a massage?
I think after.
Action.